that's a perfect lead-in. I'm Mary Nollmeyer, and I'm the Director of Finance, and Lori's getting ready to share her screen. Lori Roth is our new controller. She joined us in May. Many of you have corresponded with her already, and now you will be able to put a face to a name. We are going to go through the Cliff Notes version of everything you need to know for finance, since we only have, 18 minutes? But we're going to go through the stuff that's necessary to maintain our tax-exempt status and to allow us to report to the IRS accurately and timely, and to keep Scott out of the orange jumpsuit. So we will go through this quickly, and always email us with any questions, and then we will be having some more in-depth sessions in the future. So Lori, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you're here. And we do have a whole lot of information to cover, so hopefully I can get through this in the 18 minutes. If I'm talking fast, it sounds like I am, I probably am. If you do have questions, if you want to put them in the chat, Mary can watch that, and if there's something she can answer back quickly, she can. Otherwise, if she thinks it might affect the whole group, we may share it till the end and answer it for everyone to hear. But I'm glad you're here, and let's get started. The title of our session is Chapter Treasurer Resources, Tools, Reminders, and Tidbits. One of the main, hold on. One of the main responsibilities of the treasurer, and so I wanted to kind of walk through those. You are the main contact for your chapter as the financial person. So if we ever need information financially, you are the person we're going to reach out to. It may not always be you that can provide that information, but you can at least help us get to the right person. The other thing to keep in mind is that we need you to kind of coordinate with your branches. We're going to look to you if we can't get information from the branches. So it's good for you to stay in touch with them and coordinate and make sure everything is flowing properly. We also need you to attend your chapter board meetings, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. You are the main custodian of the chapter banking and investment records. Now, not everyone has investment records, but if you did, you are the main custodian of those accounts. We do ask that you keep your bookkeeping on QuickBooks Online. We ask that you do it quarterly at a minimum, but we really prefer if you could do it monthly. It's easier if you can keep up with it throughout the month. I know during COVID, there's not as much activity as there has been in past years, so quarterly might be fine, but I just don't want you to get overwhelmed trying to do everything at one time. We've talked about board meetings. Many of your board members are going to request that you provide financial reports to them at the board meetings, so that's why it's important for you to have everything current and to kind of be aware of what's gone on with your finances during the month or the quarter. You want to make sure you record all your vendor payments and records properly. That's going to come in use when you file your 1099s at year end, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then finally, you are responsible for processing and submitting all the required documentation for year end, the audit checklist, and the 1099s. What resources do you have available to help you with all of your responsibilities? Well, one of the ones we've talked a lot about today is Chapter Leader Resource website, and I've got that noted here. As Tammy mentioned, there's a finance and compliance section, and under that there's 5 different areas. I'm going to touch on most of these during our talk, so I won't go into detail here, but you can kind of see reference to the different things under each section. I think it's going to be really important maybe after today's call for you to just go in here and play around with the different sections, get familiar. If you need to download some documents onto your desktop or to print them for reference, I think you'll find there's a lot of great information there for you. And what tools can National help you with some of your, what tools can National provide to help you with some of your treasurer responsibilities? Well, of course, banking, and I've got Scott's name. He is our Chief Executive Officer, and he should be the signatory on all your bank and investment accounts. And that comes from our rules of governing chapters, which Tammy touched on earlier. There's a section 11, which relates specifically to financial management. And it does tell you that as a chapter, you must have 3 current chapter officers and Scott's signatory on that account. And if you're a branch account, you must have 2 current branch officers, a current chapter officer, and Scott's signatory. So it's going to be real important, especially if you're new to your position, you've just taken over responsibilities, to get with your bank, find out who they have on the account. Because of course, if the treasurer has left and you're now there and you're not able to sign the checks, you're going to have a problem. So it's going to be important to get all that updated when you come into your position. Chapter credit card payments. As you know, the chapters and branches hold different events, and National has a event module that we offer that you can use to collect your payments. The payments all come to National, but what we do is we turn around twice a month, usually the first and third week of the month, and send those monies out to you. So, and when we send them out, we do send a report that identifies the event and who signed up and the monies that were collected. So it's going to be real important when you get those to go ahead and deposit them right away. Make sure that we also have your correct address and the name of the treasurer on our files, because otherwise the check may end up with an old treasurer or a different address. So make sure you're updating that with us, and you can send that information to me or to our accountant, which is Jordan, and I'll have her name at the end of the slide with her email address. When you do get your event credit card payments, when you record them in QuickBooks, be real careful that the gross amount of the sale, whether it's an event or a sponsorship, is recorded in the revenue on your chart of accounts in QuickBooks, but then you're also recording the discount fee that we hold out for credit card processing as an expense. You don't want to put the net amount into your revenue, but put your gross amount into your revenue. Certificate of insurance. APWA carries a general liability policy, which covers all of your chapter activities. If you do get a contract and the event holder is requesting a certificate of insurance, just go out to the chapter leader resource site, and there is a certificate of insurance or a COI request form. Fill that out. It's pretty self-explanatory, and let us know if the event holder is requesting that they're listed as an additional and insured person. And if so, then we will make sure that when the insurance agency sends that to you, they have been added as an additional insured. We ask that you give us at least 7 to 10 business days before the event. If you want to do it sooner than that, that's great. And if it's getting close and the event holder hasn't received it, I'm sure they'll reach out to you. But it's always good to give us at least 7 to 10 business days to turn that around. Chapter rebates. As you probably have heard, the national office will send you rebates twice a year based on your membership numbers. Our first payment of the year will go out February or March, so you should be getting that here in the next month or so. That covers your membership numbers at the end of 12/31. And then a second rebate will go out in September, and that will cover whatever membership numbers you have at June 30th. When you get those rebates, make sure you're recording them in account 463, which is a revenue account titled Rebates. Contracts. If you get a contract and you need it reviewed, no matter what the dollar amount is, Mary Nollmeyer, the Director of Finance, will be happy for you to look it over with you and make any suggestions or make sure there's no unexpected risks that you may not have thought about. If it's over $10,000, we are required to review that, so make note of that. If it's an annual amount of $10,000 or more, she'll need to review it. If it falls between $5,000 and $10,000, we don't need to review it. However, we would ask that you send a copy of the contract to us for our records. The only exception to the contracts coming to us are any that relate to upcoming chapter events. And our Director of Meetings, Diana Forbes, is going to be talking about this subject in depth on Thursday next week. So just know that there's a differentiation between whether it's a chapter event or just some other type of contract for a contractor or someone of that nature. 1099 reporting. Those of you that have been around for a few weeks probably got tired of my emails, but we just filed our 1099s that were due by the end of this week. We got them in the mail yesterday, so thank you to everyone that helped me to get that done. 1099s are basically a W-2 for an employee, but these are issued to people that have provided services more than $600 that are not employees. So these would be like your musicians, your paid admins, maybe you have an accounting group that you use, planners, different things of that nature. One thing to keep in mind that the contractors do not have to be individuals. I think that's one misconception. It can be a corporation, depending on the circumstances of what kind of service is provided. It could be a partnership. So we're not really looking to you to make that determination. That's what I'm here for. So what we are asking is that you get a W-9 from any entity that you pay services to. So anytime you add a new vendor and you're making a payment, part of your process should be to say, we need a copy of your W-9 on file. That will make it a whole lot easier for you at year end when you're trying to put your 1099 information together and report it to me. Reporting is due between January 1st and January 15th. We do have that short deadline only because we do have a deadline from the IRS. And so as you can see, I didn't have a whole lot of time to turn around and accumulate everyone. So that's why those deadlines are so important. Fiscal year-end financial package. You probably know our year-end is June 30th. And so around end of June, we're going to start sending out emails to you, letting you know what information is required. This just kind of lists some of the different things that you're going to be required to send us. There's a checklist included. There's you're required to put your budget on QuickBooks. Then there's some tax forms, some bank statements. We're going to ask you to send the bank statements, your investment statements, credit card statements, anything of that nature that's going to support your balances that you have in QuickBooks. And then there's an audit checklist that you'll have to get your audit committee involved and they'll have to sign off on it. Some tips related to the financial package. I would suggest not waiting to the last minute. If they're due July 31st, which they are, then I wouldn't start on them July 30th because that's not going to give you enough time to get them together. As soon as your year end is done, or even before that, you can start pulling together your different statements and things that you know you're going to need to send to us. Go ahead and get those scanned and ready to go. I'm going to send you a secure link back in July that you can upload everything so you don't have to worry about security. The other thing you might do is talk to the prior treasurer. If they're still around or you have the opportunity to talk to them, get some input from them as to how things went last year, what were some things they learned from the process to make this smoother for you. Reconcile your bank accounts, your investment accounts, at least quarterly. Again, we recommend monthly, but quarterly at a minimum. Do all your activity in QuickBooks and make sure that you are putting together reports and information that your board and your committees are looking for. If they have a certain reporting package they want to see, make sure that you've worked on getting that and know how to provide that information to them. And then last, we suggest you use checks and credit cards and not cash for any chapter and branch activities. Your fiscal year-end budget is due by September 30th. Again, we need it entered into QuickBooks. And you're just going to review last year's activities, look at your strategic plan, look at new initiatives. What are things that you're going to discontinue that you've had in the past? What are you going to continue? Kind of think about what are the expected costs going to be this year. Maybe you're going to use a percentage of increase. But just different things to look at to put together where you think you're going to end up for the next fiscal year. And then reminders of due dates, we just talked about. 1099s are due by January 15th. Keep in mind that 1099s cover the prior calendar year. So that's going to be January 1 to 12/31, whereas your financial package is going to cover the fiscal year. And that's going to be July 1 to June 30th, and it's due by July 31. Your audit checklist is due by September 30th. And then your budget is due by September 30th. So you can see there's a little bit of a spread with due dates. So we give you a little extra time to get your audit checklist and your budget done. Tax ID numbers. APWA has one tax ID number, and that's 36-2202880. All of the chapters, all of the branches fall under the same tax ID number. There should be no chapter branch with a separate ID. If you go to the bank and they say, we need a separate ID, you have to say, no, we fall under the chapter, and we just need to put it in the name of APWA doing business as, and then you can put your chapter name behind it. We do have an assigned W-9 out on the Chapter Leader Resource tab under taxes, so that you have reference to that if you ever need to give it to someone. And then finally, some tidbits, things that might help you. Chapter treasurer is responsible for all the branches, as we talked about earlier. When you're recording your revenues and expenses in QuickBooks, be very cognizant that you're not using the miscellaneous income or miscellaneous expense category excessively. We ask that those accounts only have less than $2,500 in them. If you're not quite sure where to put something and everything seems to be ending up in miscellaneous, maybe reach out to me and I can help you identify which account would be a better fit. You never want to post transactions to a prior fiscal year that we've already closed out. So let's say in July you find a mistake and we'd already closed June 30th. You cannot go back and change those numbers once they've been reported to National. We've already given those numbers and included them in our 990 tax return. So if you ever find that situation, reach out to me. There's a way we can figure it out, and I'll help you with that. Only use the chart of accounts that National has set up. Don't try to add your own account numbers. Again, that's for consistency and summarizing everything for year-end purposes. So we need everyone to be using the same chart of accounts. And I mentioned earlier, it's important to get W-9s from all vendors. The only exception to that would be your student scholarship recipients. We don't have to report monies that we pay to them, so that's not important. But every other vendor, I would highly recommend, if you're making a payment, just go ahead and request that W-9. Stay current on your bank activity. We talked about that. Something through QuickBooks is if you, once you're set up in QuickBooks and we've connected your bank account to QuickBooks, it seems like it's great and it does everything for you, but you need to be really careful that you recognize that when the bank brings over those transactions, they're going to try and dump them all into a miscellaneous type line, and they're going to think they're all expenses. It's important that you go into that download from the bank and identify what is the appropriate code, and then also go ahead and put the vendor name in there. Who are we making that payment to? If you do that, it'll make it a lot easier when we go to do the 1099s at year end, because you can use your QuickBooks as a resource to summarize payments to different vendors, and you don't have to go through and pick and choose what you paid to that vendor. Another, excuse me, another area that seems to cause a lot of trouble is if you're transferring monies between bank accounts. Let's say you have a checking account and a savings account, and you do that within the bank. The bank that you took the money out of is going to think that was a payment, and it's going to try and record that as an expense and a payment. And that, as you know, that's not what that is. It's really, it was your money, you're just transferring it between accounts. So if you ever get a transfer and the bank is trying to record it as an expense, what I suggest is you just go in and delete that transaction from the bank and then just manually enter it as a transfer between accounts. And there's a real easy way of doing that in QuickBooks. Do not link your investment accounts to QuickBooks. I know that when we first started setting everyone up with their QuickBooks last year, some of the investment accounts got connected, and it just caused a lot of heartache, I think, on the back end, because there's so many transactions that for your investment account that there's so much activity coming through, and it really doesn't all need to be there. So I would highly recommend just disconnecting your investment account if it's set up to QuickBooks. Follow up on any outstanding checks. And as Mary mentioned earlier, we're going to be offering different QuickBook training sessions over the next few months. One of them that I know has been dear to everyone's heart is how to record investment transactions, because it's very important to make sure you're separating your realized and unrealized gains and losses. So I've got some training that I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks on that subject. So be on the lookout for that. And I don't know if we've got time for question and answers or if anything came up in the chat, but if you need to get in touch with me, I've got my phone number here listed, Mary's name and phone number. And then I mentioned Jordan, she's our accountant. She can help with your certificates of insurance and different things like that. So I guess that's it. Anybody have any quick questions or?